Yeah, the call wild's always bringing me home. Call wild's always bringing me home. Call wild's always bringing me
Yeah, exactly.
home.
All right, perfect. Well, hello, wild ones. Welcome to another episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. I am so excited to have Alexandra Johnston here with me today of Alex and Waterlust, the perfect Instagram name for you. I love it. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm very good. I'm super stoked to be talking to you finally.
Yes, me too. I am super excited to chat with you. And we've connected on Instagram a couple of times, so I'm excited to finally, get to know a little bit more about your background and everything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we've known each other for a while via Instagram.
Yeah.
We've had all these back and forths, and this is like our first proper face-to-face conversation.
Yes, I love it. And then hopefully one of these days we'll do a fun excursion or adventure together. So
We have to.
manifesting that, yes. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited to get to know a little bit more about your background. What drew you to the ocean? Like, where does your love of the ocean come from?
I feel like it's not an original story because I feel like everyone has the same one. It's that I watched Free Willy when I was 5.
Oh man, yes.
And I feel like anybody who's drawn to cetaceans or orcas has the same story. It's like I already love the ocean. My mum always tells me, she was like, you were always drawn to it. There's never a time when I remember not being in love with the ocean, but I feel like something changed when I
Yeah.
watched Free Willy, and that was when like the real passion for, especially for cetaceans, kicked in. So yeah, it's that way all Free Willy.
I loved Free Willy growing up too. I think I remember you did an awesome thing. Was it this past weekend or the weekend before? Empty the tanks, the protest, and
That
I
was the
saw.
weekend just gone, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that you had one of those the orca floats, and I remember telling you that when I was younger too, that I was obsessed with Free Willy, and I made my mom keep the blow up in the house.
I do remember you telling me that, yeah.
Yeah, so I love that we can connect on that too.
It is one of those things, like no matter how old you are, if I see an inflatable orca or just anything, I can't help but be like, Salana. Like it just comes so naturally. I think what a time we got to grow up in when Free Willy came out.
Oh yeah, it's like what an impactful story, and the movie version and the real life version, which obviously like I didn't know about the whole information or story with Kiko until much later in life. So
Yeah. I always actually remember at the end of Free Willy, there was like an 08, because I lived in America at the time, and there's like an 0800 Save the Whales number or something like that you could call. And I remember calling it and then getting the poster. You got like a free poster of J-Pod or something. And then I feel like my origin story doesn't line up with my love for Free Willy because I lived in America and I would go to SeaWorld. So when I was younger, I didn't think that orcas and dolphins should be captured from the wild. I kind of understood that, but I was like, oh, the ones that are in captivity are probably fine. So I was like this huge Free Willy fan that went to SeaWorld. So I was like, I really don't like my origin story, but I think it's really important to be vocal about that and talk about it because I feel like so many people are still unaware, and like I don't want it to feel like it's a conversation where you bash people for that kind of thing. I think it's really good
100%.
to have an open vocabulary about that kind of stuff, especially with Empty the Tanks, as you just referenced, because us
Yes.
being outside of aquariums or wherever the locations were, I think we had 47 locations for Empty the Tanks this year.
Wow.
Is to have a conversation with people going in and be like, this is the reality of captivity. This is what's going on. Educate them, have a conversation rather than it being like, you guys suck for going in there. It's really supposed to be a
Yeah.
peaceful advocation and raising awareness. Yeah, so to tie in Free Willy and Empty the Tanks, that was that was what
Yeah,
happened.
no, I think that's such a beautifully important point too, because that's the way that we are able to connect and change people's minds is through gentle conversation and just learning too. So I really love that aspect of what you guys are doing. And it's funny that you say that about like the Free Willy, because obviously I love that movie growing up too. And I remember going to my mom's the other day and looking because I had three favorite animals growing up: horses, dolphins, and wolves. And I remember I kind of got poked
Nice.
fun of when I changed schools, and they were like, "Oh, what's your favorite animal?" I'm like, "Well, I really can't choose one." But anyways, to digress, I had a picture of going to Dolphin Cove and swimming with the dolphins, and I thought like, "Oh,
Yeah,
that was such a great thing." But then as like I got older, and it's so funny looking back on it now, and being like, oh man, and knowing all the stuff that I know about like captivity and dolphins, it's just I think you don't know until you know, right?
exactly. And you know what's funny? God, I'm really out on myself, but I did a trainer for the day thing at
Mhm.
Dolphin Cove when I was younger. And that was actually the experience that started my shift into conservation because I they do like a behind the scenes tour. So I went behind the scenes and they had this whiteboard with every single dolphin's name, and next to every single name was what medication they were on. And in my head, I was like, oh, so every
Mhm.
dolphin is on medication. It's a bit odd. Like, why do they all need medication? And then
Mhm.
seeing the pens, the enclosures they were kept in that the public couldn't see, like behind the lagoons that kind of look all fancy. I was like, wow, these are really small. And you keep them in there for this amount of time in the day. Like that was really the shift of we're going to Discovery Cove of being like, oh, this doesn't feel good at all.
So, yeah, that's such a good point. And I also think like I was just thinking about this morning before like getting on the call with you too, is how in zoos how they have so much like enrichment, and with cetaceans and like ocean animals, and especially specifically orcas and dolphins, that there's like their enrichment is like these tricks and things like that. Like there's no, I always think about this. There's no kelp, there's no like other fish in there with them. Like it's so blank, it kind of boggles my mind that they're not advocating that they should be there, obviously, anyway. I agree with you, but that there isn't even enrichment or anything like that in there either.
Yeah. I mean, I think the scale of captivity, the environment varies. And I've seen some really horrific facilities, and I know there are facilities that people would say are on the better end of the scale, but I firmly believe there is no tank that can replicate the wild. There's no tank that can even come close to that. So that's always going to be my standpoint on it, is that no, there'll be no enrichment that will ever be enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And also for people listening that don't know, talk a little bit more about your affiliation with Dolphin Project, and maybe a little bit more about what they do, which is really amazing.
Yeah, so I started volunteering for Dolphin Project maybe 15 years ago now.
Amazing.
So yeah, if you don't know who they are a non-profit organization focused on dolphin welfare, anti-slaughter, anti-captivity. And Rick founded Dolphin Project on Earth Day 1970. And he was actually the trainer for Flipper.
Oh,
So
wow.
worked on the capture team, yeah, trained the dolphins for the Flipper series. And to this day maintains that the dolphin that played Flipper died in his arms by suicide. She decided not to take another breath. As you know, dolphins are conscious
Mhm.
breathers. They have to make a decision to be able to take that next breath. And he maintains that she didn't. And from that day, he kind of switched and has worked tirelessly for 50 plus years now to undo an industry he feels like he helped create. Because once Flipper came out, the kind of want to swim with dolphins and be close to dolphins kind of went worldwide and global. So yeah, he's worked tirelessly to help release dolphins where possible. We have a rehabilitation retirement facility in Bali where we released ex-performing dolphins. Um, and so that's what we do. And one of our main campaigns is in Taiji, Japan as well, where we document the dolphin drive hunt and slaughters. So yeah, it's a lot of dolphin.
A lot of
advocacy and welfare. But yeah, I watched The Cove. That was one of the turning points for me as well. After I watched The Cove and saw what happened in Taiji, I was just like, okay, I'm all in. What can I do? How can I help?
Yeah, I have to be honest, my heart can't. I know what goes on in the Cove, and I know what
Mm,
goes on in the film, and I just have not had the heart to be able to fully watch it after all of these years. But I know, and I
same.
followed your journey to Taji this past year as well. And for people that are listening that don't know what happens, maybe just describe a little bit of, what you do while you're there, you're watching, and what goes on in the Cove.
Yeah, so gosh, this is like so much to talk about. But so basically, for 6 months of the year, September through to March, a fleet of boats will go out looking for multiple species of dolphins. They have a drive quota list that they follow, and they'll drive these dolphins into the cove. And depending on the species, some will either be taken for captivity or some will be slaughtered for their meat.
Mhm.
Obviously, dolphins like bottlenose, like the classic flipper, are the most kind of highly valuable dolphins, and are usually taken for captivity. And then you have some species like striped and rhesus that are primarily slaughtered. And so we're there to document, to raise awareness. Right now, we're focused on like legal pursuits and trying to create policy change within Taiji. But I think Rick started going in 2003 to document, and The Cove came out in 2009, and we're still there every season documenting and raising awareness. Yeah, not the
Okay.
easiest thing to do, but I think seeing public perception change over the years, because really the captive trade is the economic driver for these slaughters and these hunts.
Right.
Seeing the public perception change towards captivity over the years has really been like, progress is process, and it's slow, but it's happening. And that
Yeah.
really helps, our drive to be there and continue to document and raise awareness.
Yeah, two important things to focus on, right? Is like hopefully changing the policy so that doesn't happen anymore, right? But then also just
Mm-hmm.
in general ending captivity or places that these dolphins could be gone and sold to as well. So it's heartbreaking to obviously hear that this happens every year, but I do see like a really nice change that the more that people know about this and know the kind of cruelty and things that happen to them in the Cove, and then when in transport and going to all these captive facilities, that how not right it is, and especially with how highly intelligent dolphins are, right? Like I think it's been thrown out there that dolphins could possibly be smarter than us as humans.
I wouldn't disagree. No, I think that's one thing we have to remember is that like these are large brain gregarious animals that are sentient beings, right?
Yeah.
And what's happening in Taiji is just essentially an exploitation of their natural resources. It's not tradition, it's not culture, it's purely driven by profit. And so I guess our job is to stop the supply and demand for captive dolphins. And that's always one of the things I find hardest about being there is when I'm watching something like a transfer, because I always it's that feeling of like, gosh, I'm watching you leave the ocean for the last time.
uh, yeah.
As they get put in a truck, like they get taken from the ocean, they get hoisted up, put into a crane, put in a truck, and you just think, God, your whole life's going to change forever. And you were swimming free a couple of days ago. It's like watching the whole process of them being wild, being driven in, being either they're taken captive or slaughtered. It's just like, wow. It's a lot
Yeah.
to process sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and hopefully we can slowly but surely over time like change people's perspective to not go to these facilities where they're doing, like, I know Dolphin Project, if people listening would love to go and do this, you can go on their website and I'll link it underneath, that you can take the pledge to not go to a dolphin or a whale show. And the thing is obviously when you're younger, you don't know any better, especially with what the campaigning that SeaWorld did. And like, you think like, right? Like even you brought it up in the beginning, how you really think that it's a totally different environment, and you don't realize. And I think the more that science has come out and done research on how intelligent cetaceans are, that it's just a totally different experience. Like what they're doing with these tricks and these shows, like it's the same thing as going, like, elephants or bears or tigers or lions at the circus. It's not their natural environment. It's not their what they would do in the wild. It's like what you're going to see is just like a trick show. It's not, at least for me, that's not enjoyable. So
No, Rick always he has this saying, and I think it sums up very well. He says, "A dolphin in captivity represents a dolphin no more than Mickey Mouse represents a real mouse, like real mice." And I think
right.
it's such a good, yeah, it just encompasses everything that is a dolphin in captivity. It's not.
I also feel like that all a lot of these cetaceans, because they're stuck in jail, basically it's jail, over chlorinated pools, which are very bad for their health, which I'm sure, which is why they're on so many medications, and a lot of people catching up or keeping up with these animals and taking pictures of them, that like their teeth are worn down from the sides of the pools and the scrapes and all these negative effects, and not only physically but also mentally. They're really mentally ill animals too. They're not healthy. They're very social animals. A lot of these animals in captivity are kept alone. There's a lot of places now, right, that there's a lot of orcas being kept alone, and they don't even move when they're used to swimming like thousands of miles or hundreds of miles a day. So, and these trainers that worked with them get the repercussions of that. And there's been a couple of people that have even died or gotten severely hurt because of these incidences.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember you don't really see incidents like this in the wild.
Right.
I think people don't quite understand the toll that it does take on cetaceans mentally to be in captivity. And like I said, there are varying scales of captivity, right? And there are some facilities they are cared for better than others. That doesn't mean that I agree with keeping cetaceans in captivity, but I've seen different levels of awfulness in these places. And for me, I've probably spent the most time recently at Taiji Whale Museum in Taiji, and the things that I've seen there, I mean, constantly, like you say, mentally, they're constantly logging all the time, not much movement, a lot of stereotypic behaviors, which is just repetitive movements, a lot of like jaw popping against tanks and pens, which is obviously where the teeth get worn down, um, and a lot of fighting within tanks as well, or sea pens. There was one particular, was a rhesus dolphin, a piebald rhesus, and I still have the picture. Was his whole head covered in open wounds, and there was
Ugh.
like antiseptic spray, but it had already become infected. And
Ugh.
when you just like can look into their eyes and you just feel like you can see into their soul. And I've never felt so bad looking at a dolphin in all my life. Like, what have they done to you?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, and it's when you
heartbreaking.
see, yeah, and it's when you see that things like that make you really want to fight for every dolphin in captivity, and
Yeah,
just fight for the change of mindset, so that at some point we can phase this out. And I think that's also a misconception with Empty the Tanks, is that everybody thinks that we're advocating to get the dolphins and just throw them into the wild and get them out of the
right.
tanks. And that's not what it is. Yeah, Empty the Tanks is really about, like I said, educating the public and advocating for policy change and phasing the captive industry out. It's really not about getting the dolphins and just
Right.
throwing
There's
all
a
these
lot.
captive bred dolphins back into the wild. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I would love to talk about more about is it Uma Loom
Uma Lumba.
Oompa Loompa Uma
Yeah.
Loompa.
Yeah.
I love that, like, there's obviously a lot more that goes into the release, like, and I'm sure it's like soft release. You have to reteach these dolphins how to hunt again. I know one of the dolphins, right, had to get like a lot of like teeth put in or something like that.
Yeah, dolphin dentures.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing.
I know. So yeah, Uma Lumba is currently the world's first and only permanent dolphin. It's rescue, rehabilitation, retirement facility. And So we had these three dolphins that came from the Melka Hotel. We rescued them, and also in partnership with Jakarta Animal Aid Network. And they were in a chlorinated pool. I mean, they had so many health conditions, same with teeth, with eyes, like they were just really not in a great way. And even just getting them into the bay, the ocean bay where the sanctuary was, you saw a difference immediately. Just that they could feel the natural rhythms of the ocean. It was just the environment was so much better for them. They immediately improved. Um, and we just had the most incredible team that worked tirelessly to get them ready for a release. And what was amazing was that Dolphin Project were able to take the trainers from the Melka Hotel with them. So the people that
Oh,
had been training them for 10 plus years, well, because these dolphins were taken from the wild, they were then put into the traveling dolphin circuses of Indonesia. Then they went to the Melka Hotel. So the trainers that had them at the Melka Hotel came with us and were part of the team that released them back into the wild, which I just think is the most incredible thing. Because I also people
beautiful.
think that, yeah, people think that within this movement, it's people will lose jobs and we're trying to make people lose money, and that's not what it is at all. And the fact that we were able to do that and take this team with us and then be a part of the whole journey. And I was there when the dolphins were released, and just seeing them, the emotion from the caretakers watching them go free, it breaks me every time. It makes me cry every time. I just think, God, you've just done the most incredible thing watching them go free.
I just got like chills. That's so beautiful. And I love that full circle connection and,
It really was.
getting those trainers involved, and they clearly must love those animals, and being able to see them, if that famous quote, right? If you love something, set it free. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what a beautiful full circle moment that was. And I love that you guys included them, and that it's this nature is just so healing, right? Like we don't even know like just being able to put them back in the bay and feel the natural rhythms, and just being in like a home space is incredible. And I love that journey. And I know that they also take care of sea turtles there. So like they do other
Yeah,
things too besides dolphins.
I know. While there's no dolphins there, the sea turtles are. Okay, well, it depends on how many kind of come in, but yeah, that's a sea turtle hospital at the moment. And Femke, who kind of runs the operation over there, I mean, she's just like Superwoman. She's just rescuing animals every day, whether it's like turtles or monkeys or bears. She's just like, yeah, the sanctuary is nonstop. It's not just dolphins at the moment, but I think that's great.
Yeah. That's I love that, just people trying to help and do the right thing. And I think that's like I love that that's like the point, right, of Empty the Tanks, is to try to see, and come into alignment with how intelligent these creatures are, and that they are similar to us in the fact of like their intelligence, their bonds with their family, like the pod groups and units. They're very connected. I remember having Maria and Isa on, who that's how
Yeah.
we kind of connected with. And I believe she's a member of Empty the Tanks Mexico. I
Hmm.
forget her name, Mer
Marielle.
Marielle.
Maria, yeah.
She was telling them a story about how, dolphins have like names for their children, and like, they have their
The
own
signature
specific ones.
whistle.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
so beautiful. And the more that we bring those kind of positive things to people, that they can recognize that these dolphins have families, and we shouldn't be separating them, and they have their own importance in the wild, right? Like I always like say this too, is that, you know, why does an animal have to have a specific value to us, right? Like it's always this like, oh, what can this animal provide us? And maybe just changing
Yeah.
that and recognizing that, you know, dolphins, cetaceans, any animal has, wild animal, has its own important value in the ecosystem. So,
Yeah, and it's a fragile ecosystem at that. You remove one thing and the whole ecosystem out there collapses. So it's, especially with like orcas, when you look, they're a keystone species and they're an umbrella species. So you remove them and everything below it goes. And I
yeah.
just think you're right in saying putting the value back on them being in the wild
Yeah.
instead of a value of, going to see them in captivity or things like that. And I think we've got so much we don't know. There's so much we have left to learn about them. When you think of everything we have learned, imagine all the stuff we don't know. You
Yeah,
know, it blows
absolutely.
my mind with cetaceans, especially. And I always think going to see them in the wild is it's just such a unique and beautiful thing. And every time, I'm so lucky that I get to be out on the water quite a lot. But every time you go, it's something different. You never get the same kind of trip
Yeah,
twice. And I think when you go to a captive facility, you watch the same tricks over and over again, jumping through hoops, playing with balls, or like weird things they would never, not babies they would be doing in the wild.
right.
So I always just think it's the most incredible thing just to watch them be free.
Yeah. And just being able to, and again, that sort of like value is like letting them have the experience on their terms. I don't know, as somebody like that is like obviously like talk to like different wildlife photographers and things like that. People sometimes like trying to get like the best shot, like, or like trying to whistle at an animal or something like that to get the best shot. Like, I remember one of my friends, Deanna Deshay, she focuses a lot on African wildlife photography. She's like, I find that the best kind of pictures are the ones that are them just, doing their natural thing in the environment, maybe a big yawn or something like that, like just being like a little fly on the wall. Being able to just have that experience on their terms and hopefully obviously not like disturbing them. Like this isn't like oh yeah, go in the wild and do the same things like you try to do in captivity, like try to touch them or ride them or anything like that. It's just like being able to have that really cool experience that's a unique experience every time you go out is something that's different and invaluable.
It is. And you're right. I think the goal should always be less disturbance. Like, we're in their environment, we're in their home, try and disturb them as little as possible. And I'm a big advocate of giving them space. And some of the best encounters I've had in the wild have been from like, engines off, keeping a distance, or, whatever it is. And then that's when I've had the most curious encounters when they've been like, okay, well, maybe let me come to you and check you out rather than,
Right.
when you see bad behavior in terms of cutting them off or circling, things like that. I think it's really important. I talk about choose wild,
Yeah.
don't buy a ticket, choose wild, but it's also really important to choose ethical as well and do your research on the operators that you go out with and how they are around wildlife. I just think in general, having respect towards wildlife should always be the goal.
Yeah, and respect their space and that's
Mm-hmm.
their home. Like we wouldn't want somebody coming up to our door or like being in our backyard or like looking in through the window. So try to think of it that
Exactly.
way.
When I think of like how antisocial I can be and how so many people are, and I think, gosh, yeah, just respecting their space and giving them the opportunity to navigate the encounter, basically, I think is really important.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back a little bit to like the empty the tanks portion. It's not
Mhm.
throwing animals back in the wild, right? Because that wouldn't be
Yeah,
ethical either. And I think that's important to get out is that we can't just be like, okay, empty the tanks and there you go. Go right back
yeah,
into the
no,
that's not
no. I mean, empty the tanks is really about changing the business model, of captivity, and like I
right.
said, and phasing captivity out, which I think the message is getting there. There are some countries like France that are now on board, and there's some countries that maybe like haven't outright banned it, but have made the regulations very strict, so it's difficult to have cetaceans in captivity.
Totally.
But I think it's just advocating for that change, you know, and
Yeah.
to face captivity out. It really isn't about taking dolphins and just throwing them back in the wild. I know it sounds like it with empty the tanks, but it's just a really catchy
Well,
slogan.
right.
But
Right.
Rachel Carberry started it, I think, gosh, 13, 14 years ago now. And then she started it by being outside an aquarium and speaking to people and having a conversation with people. And if you ever meet Rachel, she's like the nicest
Oh,
person in the whole world. Um, and so I just know that this movement was born out of love and respect, and being a peaceful protest, a peaceful event. And
yeah.
that's what it's supposed to be, is more about education and advocating for a change in business model rather than dump the
Right.
dolphins in the ocean.
Exactly. I was gonna ask you too about, there was obviously that kind of like big devastating thing that happened with Lolita, the orca from Miami Seaquarium, how
Mhm.
she was a part of the Southern Resident group, right? She lived up over there.
Yes.
So
Yeah, she was an
trying
L-pod whale.
an alpine, right? Yeah. So, I mean, she was older, but there was obviously this movement to try to re-release her back to her family in the wild. And I remember talking to somebody else, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on it. But she's like a scientist, and she was saying from the perspective of how, and I know that you did the film Searching for Chinook, which I also want to talk to you about too. That the southern residents are obviously there's not that many of them left. And to take a
Mhm.
captive orca that's kind of sick and ailing and to bring her back, and that could have affected, the wild population. You don't know what diseases she could bring. So, and she didn't think that it would have actually, like, they were just kind of talking out of their mouth that they weren't actually going to plan on doing it. So I was interested in hearing your perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not a scientist. I
Sure.
come very much from an advocating conservation background and storytelling, filmmaking. In my opinion, and from the research I had done and from, you know, people I'd spoken to, I don't ever think she was getting moved, in my personal
Yeah.
opinion. I don't ever think she was going anywhere. Um and obviously you don't know what could have been. You don't know how she would have reacted had you put her back in the wild, had you had her in a sanctuary bay. Like there was all this talk, but obviously, I think every cetacean is an individual and every case is different. Um, and so all of that has to be taken into account because I don't think there's like a one size fits all answer when it comes to rehabilitation or release.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, but in
absolutely.
terms of her actually being moved, I didn't see that happening.
Yeah, I think that's important because, I obviously like on Facebook, I follow all these like killer whale groups and things like that. And I think, that's a very touchy subject with people, how people are like, they stole her, her, like
Mhm.
that like she died before she could get released. And I think it's important to keep that same kind of like faith that even though that probably didn't work out and that there was a lot of, like you said, like the individuality of each animal is important, and we don't know if what could have happened or what could have been, but to keep that same kind of passion and like don't give up on the other cetaceans that are in captivity uh as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Turkey it was also hard because the southern residents are such an iconic population, and like you said, they're critically endangered. The numbers are continuously dangerously low, and I know, and a lot of that stems from that period in the 60s and 70s where generations were wiped out because they were captured, and that's Lolita Tokate is one of those whales. So I think that's also why it's pretty painful for people to talk about because the impact is still felt today of what was done to them all those years ago. And I know now with Chinook, their primary food source being pretty scarce, it's kind of like they just can't rebound and get back to being thriving because there's just a multitude of threats that, man-made threats that we keep throwing at them. So I also think that's, what makes it extremely painful with, I always like never know what like Lolita or Socrates how I prefer to call her, but
Yeah.
yeah, with her. Mm.
Yeah. I had on Tamara Kelly from the Orca Conservancy on a couple of episodes ago, and their whole focus is on the southern residents. So we talked pretty heavily about all of the different, she said it's kind of like a conglomeration of things that are affecting them. But I know you did this amazing film searching for Chinook. So I'd love to know a little bit more about like how you got started doing that, and it like seemed like such an amazing film.
Yeah. So it actually, the first time I went to Salmon Islands was with Dolphin Project. I went to Superpod
Cool.
in 2016, and it was one of those things. So I had never seen a wild orca until that trip.
Wow.
And yeah, I get so emotional when I think about it because I was at Lime Kiln. So the first time I ever saw a wild orca, I was on land. I was at Lime Kiln, and I got there and J-Pod popped up, and it was the J16. So it was like Mike and his mum, and at the time J50, and
Um,
the emotion and what I felt, I was just like, I just could not believe it. It was incredible. And yeah, spent the week there. Just, I mean, if you've watched Free Willy and you've seen the Southern Residents and the opening credits, it's just like your dream to go and experience it in real life. So I just could not believe like my luck and how incredible it was and how moved I was and how even the whole community on Salmon Island, it's this incredible community that basically exists for these whales. You know, the love and the passion that everybody has for the Southern Residents, it's contagious. It's just, um, so I went away after that trip fully in love with the Southern Residents. And then I went back, and at the time I was working as a talent manager. And I went back with the girl I was working with, Maisie, and I was like, you have to come and, you know, experience this island and experience these whales. And we were on a boat, and again, the J16s came, and there was, at this point, whose calf was it? There was a calf that didn't show up with mum.
mhm,
It was Sonic. It was
mhm.
Sonic. And I remember hearing, we were with Maya's Legacy Whale Watch, it was Sarah and Jeff, and they were like, no, Sonic's not here. And that was when I really started to learn how critical the situation was with the Southern Residents, um, and really look into kind of the topic of why are calves dying? Why are the numbers so low? And I said to Maisie, I was like, I really feel like we should try and do something. Um, and that's kind of when we came up with Searching for Chinook. So I spent, over the course of a few years, I would spend months on the island at a time documenting. And the first summer I was there was some of the Taliqua carried the calf for all those
Um,
days, and the summer that J50 died. So it was just like, what is going on with this population? It was we were
yeah.
just felt I was just running around the whole summer trying to figure out like, you know, these things were just unfolding in front of us, and we couldn't believe it was like these unprecedented things. Um, and after I was done like filming with that, I still haven't released it because I feel like we put teasers out and things like that, but I felt like the plight of orcas globally is something I really wanted to talk about. Like right now with the Iberian orcas, they're my local population in Portugal.
Yes.
There's a lot going on with them and vessel interactions, and I want I want to create something about the plight of orcas worldwide. And there was something with Searching for Chinook that was it never felt quite finished to me because
Mm.
one, I'm very invested in the story, and I wanted it to be told in a way that would make a difference for the orcas. And then when I started filming the Iberian Orcas was like 2020. Um, yeah, I just felt like I wanted to do something for the plight of them globally. So that's what I'm working on at the minute. It's like a project for orcas worldwide. So we'll see
I
we'll see
love
how it
that.
goes. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see how it goes. But that's what I'm working on. But I actually really like the fact that I like everything I filmed from 2018 till now. Kind of over the years, I've been able to document, you know, how things have unfolded and what's happening with different populations. Um, so yeah, that's the project at the moment. So maybe Searching for Chinook will be encompassed in something else.
I love that. Yeah, I could even see it being like because the other cool thing for people listening is that there's different types of orcas and they eat different things. So there's transients and then there's the southern residents that focus specifically on fish. And what I talked to Tamara about was that they did studies, like scientific studies on like people be like, oh, well, why can't they just eat, marine
Oh
animals or
yeah.
things like that? And it's like, it would actually probably break their jaws or something like that, they're just not physically capable of doing that. And they also never learned to do that. That's against their kind of, like
It's
their
culture, isn't it? It's culture
culture.
is such a huge
Exactly.
part of, you know, of orca life, and it is culture, and like you said, and also evolution, kind of well over 30 million years of evolution, and then we want to turn around and be like, well, why don't you just change what you eat? It's just not how it works. Oh,
Yeah.
but we have this conversation because I wish they would. I wish they would take a bite out of a porpoise or something else because then, they'd be eaten. But unfortunately, that isn't the case with orca culture. And,
Right.
hopefully we can do something, especially for the southern residents, to, bring the numbers of Chinook back. I mean, there are things we know can be done. It's just actually executing that and getting it
Yeah.
done.
So it's an uphill
Yeah.
battle, unfortunately, but I know, there's so many people that, like you said, love the Southern residents and that are fighting really hard to protect them. And I could also see, like, going back to your the searching for Chinook, I could see that being like a really cool just series, and maybe having like it episodic or something like that, where it could be like Southern residents, maybe like a couple episodes, or and then the Iberian orcas, and maybe something else. I could see that being pretty cool. Hi, wild ones. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. This episode is sponsored by my clothing brand Femme Sauvage, and you can find a discount code and link in the description. So check it out. We have a lot of amazing designs, and $5 of the proceeds goes to different charities. So please feel free to check it out and enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks so much. So
I
yeah.
know. I'm not 100% sure like how it's going to be, but I've been working for the last few years on it. So we'll see how it turns out. But I mean, I'm very
Can't wait.
passionate about storytelling for orcas and for dolphins. So I hope something, the goal is to make a difference, right? The goal is
Right.
to help protect them. So that's always what we're working towards. But yeah, I mean, here the story is very different. The orcas here are eating the Atlantic bluefin tuna. But yeah, the altercation comes, it's obviously human conflict in many different forms, but it's with the sailboats
That's
along
right.
this coast. I don't know if you've seen the headlines
Oh yeah, the
of the
orcas
Iberian Orcas.
sinking yachts. I've seen a couple of really funny
Sink the
memes that are
rich.
yeah, there's some really funny memes that I've seen, which also is not funny because they're, getting I saw that they're getting explosives thrown at them and all these other terrible things, but yeah, it's funny to see how people interpret that with like their own, you know, uh
Yeah.
interpretations, but then also like the reality of what they're going through. There was obviously some talk that maybe the matriarch got hit by a boat and she's teaching her pod to go after them. Is it the same pod, do we know, or is it just a bunch of different ones?
So there's 5 families,
Okay.
and across those families, there's different orcas. Some interact with boats and some don't. Whenever I've been around them, granted I haven't been on a sailboat, they've always been pretty curious about the boats, but it always from what I've learned, and I feel very lucky because I've, been able to observe many orca researchers and learn a lot from what I know. It's playful behavior from what I have seen. But I can completely understand being on a sailboat and it being the middle of the night and having these huge apex predators approach the boat and dismantle the rudder and ram the hull. And so what's been really frustrating is the media have completely villainized the orcas and turned it into clickbait and
Yeah.
sensationalized everything. And I think what that has done has been extremely dangerous for this population because they're critically endangered anyway. And then what you've done is like scaremongered everybody who's out on the water. And so now we're seeing like bottlenose dolphins being shot because people are just scared and they don't really know how to ID a species. There are people that are taking illegal weapons on board, like you said, firecrackers, bombs, pouring diesel on them, pouring sand on them. And so what I think is really important is uniting user groups.
Yeah.
And kind of, working together to understand the behavior, educate people about orcas, about their behavior and the best practices while you're on the water. Because I really think the media did a terrible job of protecting these orcas and just exasperating the situation.
Yeah, I think we unfortunately see that a lot with like clickbait articles in general. And as much as I do think some of the memes are funny, I think that they can kind of alienate those people further that are struggling on the sailboats that, maybe that's their livelihood. Maybe they've worked really hard to get a sailboat. They love being on the ocean. And instead of maybe trying to captivate those people to be protectors of orcas or educating them, they've now been more isolated and alienated. And then on top of it, having these kind of clickbaity articles, and it's just kind of a mess, right?
Yeah, it is. And I spoke with a sailor who watched his boat sink. He had to be rescued, and he watched his everything he owned sink. And I just thought it's just super important for everybody to work together and to unite people. I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't sail because it's where the orcas live, and I just think it's their right to be there. It's not our right to be there. Obviously, that's just me, and I completely understand that people want to
Right.
sail and feel like it's their right to as well. But I think if that's the case and we're in a stage where we can't avoid the conflict, it's really important that we educate people on the water and we make them as aware as possible. If there's orcas around, or if they need to know to be able to ID a species, just so we don't have, I mean, like I said, shooting bottlenose thinking it was an orca because you saw a dorsal.
Yeah, that's so sad. Yeah, and yeah, I love that you were able to also connect with one of the sailboat owners as well. And like you said, I think it's all about education, not alienating. How are we going to work together to like resolve this conflict? Because it's a very tricky situation, right? Like these are wild
Yeah.
orcas, so they've learned how to do it. They keep doing it. As much as they've, I guess, tried to be like, shut off the engines, like, go slow. Like, it's very hard to try to think of a good solution that's going to come about of this, right?
It is, especially because different. Like every orca is different, right? Some react differently
Yeah.
to you turning the engines off. Some react differently if you go faster. So I don't think, as of right now, that there is one set best thing to do. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a protocol right now. I mean, it's still in the midst of figuring everything out. And again, this kind of behavior, it's not unprecedented because we just don't know if it's a fad. We don't know how long it will continue for. So I think what's important, while the scientists and researchers are still exploring what the best options are, is definitely to give them space. Like, if you see them on the water, you don't need to interact with them. Just give them their space. And if you can even avoid sailing in those areas, then for now, maybe that's the best option. I know that will have people in uproar, but I just, that it's their home.
Yeah.
It's their home. And if the option is conflict or don't sail, then don't sail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I see a very similar thing happen with wolves. It's like always these highly
Mm.
intelligent animals about these misconceptions and clickbait articles, um and it really does a lot of damage to trying to educate people because especially in the time where the internet, it's all fast reading, fast information, what
Yes.
can I get as much as possible, and it's like a very similar thing that it is negatively impacts people's perspectives of wolves. And there's so many myths, right? And like it's kind of funny because orcas are called the wolves of the ocean, right? So
Yeah.
very interesting. Like I always find that they have a lot of similarities, but that being an unfortunate one is that they get pretty much villainized a lot of times, and I don't think clickbait
They
articles
do.
help with that.
No, and I definitely have seen a shift. Like when you think of the Free Willy times and Shamu and how they were kind of like made to be your cuddly best friend.
Yeah.
And now if especially like on social media, sometimes I see these crazy AI videos where people put like the Jaws music on and it's an orca grabbing a person off a beach. Like I've really seen a shift in the perception of orcas being like these, but really being these apex hunters and being villainized and being shown in a different light. And it's just something that I found interesting since the Iberian Orca story has kind of come to light, is that shift in narrative. And I think that's what's really important, is changing the narrative, that they're not, killer whales attacking
Right.
humans and things like that. I think the narrative and the story really needs to shift, for the protection of orcas worldwide, really.
Right. And another very important point is that no one's died from any of these sinkings or anything like that. Nobody's been eaten. It's not like a shark attack, right? So,
No, but I feel like right now the media is doing to orcas what Jaws did for sharks. Like I
uh,
really truly
yeah,
I'm worried about it. But I think that okay, so there was one. Do you remember the story? There was one surfer, I think, in the 70s in California that said he got bit by an orca, and I think they identified the teeth to be in an orca. That's the only time like anything has happened in the wild. Um, but you're right. Nobody so far has, there's been no fatal incidents from these boats sinking, whilst it's still like extremely distressing. And I completely
of
understand losing your
course.
boat is, yeah, and
Not taking that
it
away
must be
from them at all. Yeah.
no, and it must be a terrifying experience to be on your boat and have this happen, especially if you've never seen an orca before. It must be absolutely terrifying to have
Yeah.
these apex predators around the boat and see this happen and not know what to do. So for that, I fully understand. But I just think again, that's why it's super important that we work with everybody and help educate people, and and keep the orcas and the people safe. It's
Yeah.
not a one or the other thing. We want to work together to keep everybody safe.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And again, I find it's interesting with wolves too. It's like these highly intelligent animals that there's maybe one or two incidents of wolves like killing somebody, but typically that's not they're more scared of people than that. And it's so interesting that the more highly intelligent an animal is, like they're not looking to attack us, as people, right? Like boats, I guess, are different. Like they see the boats as something different, but as us as people, right? Like you see, I don't know, there's like that famous video of the guy on I think maybe from New Zealand, and they're on a paddle board, and they're in the water, and they go in the water with the orcas, and they don't do anything with them. They're just curious, and it just goes to show how intelligent they are, and to change this perspective that they're just like mindless, like killing machines. And obviously, right, the killer whale portion of that is not it doesn't, like, I think also gives a certain narrative in one sense, but um
Yeah.
they're fearsome creatures in their own right, but they're we have to change this perspective that it's like, again, it kind of goes back to like the value of, like, what do they do for us, and how we can just appreciate animals. And I also feel like this kind of goes, at least in my mind, kind of like spiritually, how there's this aspect of like too good, or everything that's like, oh, we got to focus on the light. And it's actually like accepting like dark parts of ourselves and things like that too. And how I think that can help us also with like viewing the wild and wild animals too. And how, oh, they're like, some people will be like, oh, they're only doing this, or they're only good, or whatever. Like, we can accept that they're wild animals and wild creatures, and that their culture is different from ours. And that I think that the more we accept that as a culture and in ourselves, it'll be easier to advocate and to accept that, okay, yeah, orcas, some of them kill seals for lunch or whatever, or in that way. So I don't know. I feel like it's an important cultural shift that we could make that would help.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Although it is hard, but when you see orcas predate on mammals, or it's so hard.
I yes, it's definitely hard, but I don't
Watching
judge
the
them
Southern
for it. I know they
Residents,
gotta eat.
no, I don't judge. My friends always make fun of me because they were like, "Look what your killer whales do." 'Cause was it in Brimmer Bay not long ago? They got, was it a pygmy blue whale? Um, and it was pretty gruesome. Like they took the tongue, and everyone's like, "Look what your orcas did." I'm like, "It's nature; they have to eat." But I will say, it's nature at its finest. I think.
Of course,
It's
yeah.
pretty gruesome, but yeah, I mean, it's always easier to watch the fish eating orcas than a poor seal whose eyes are like,
Oh my gosh, I know. I saw a video of, there was somebody captured this like amazing sad video of an orca, and it had a live seal in its mouth, and it was just looking up, and I was like, oh my god.
I know. It is
But
so sad, but I do think watching orcas predate is one of the most incredible wildlife encounters you could possibly have. Like their precision and just like the way in which they hunt is epic. Like no matter what it is, it's
Yeah.
just so precise and so it takes my breath away every time, which is probably a bit weird, but I just
Well,
think they're incredible.
it's cool because I mean they really only have their mouths. Like so and the fact that they have this sort of precision is incredible.
Yeah, and to know exactly where the most nutrient dense part of the party is, whether part of the body is, whether they take the liver or the tongue. I'm just like they are so precise in everything they do and so coordinated and
Yeah, it's incredible. And then one of the last topics I wanted to kind of ask you before we go is that you did an incredible excursion to the Arctic in Norway
yeah.
this past year, um, and to go see the orcas in the wild. How was that experience like for you?
Norway to me is a very special place. I've spent the last 5 years traveling to Norway to see the orcas, and sometimes you just can't even believe what you've seen that day. And I think for me, because I've spent so much time in Taiji with, witnessing the brutality that's shown towards cetaceans or filming the Southern residents, they're endangered, filming the Iberians and they're endangered, going to Norway to see, the North Atlantic orcas thrive, like the largest gathering of orcas in the world, so many babies around, the abundance of herring, like it kind of fills the soul because you're just like, wow,
Yeah,
like look what nature can do when you let it be. So yeah, for me, Norway is an extremely special place. I do think there is that thing of slightly being oversaturated with, not quite the right regulations in some areas and maybe too many boats. But I think again, that's where it's really important that if you go somewhere like that, because you should go, it's the most incredible place. Like when the light, the animals, and the water all line up, you won't experience anything like it. But again, it's really important that you choose ethical and choose someone who's really going to put the welfare of the animals over the encounter, because it's not about getting the shot, it's not about getting the close encounter, it's really about observing them in the wild, letting them do their thing and having the most ethical encounter you can, which can be done there because there's over
yeah,
2,000 orcas that enter these fjords every year, and you've also got like humpbacks and fin whales. So if you're someone who loves orcas and loves humpbacks, it's definitely one of the most breathtaking places you could go to witness them.
yeah. That's definitely on my bucket list. Hopefully, I can go with you one day. And
I hope
check that
so.
off.
I mean, it's cold. It's really
Yeah,
cold. But if you can cope with that, then it's all good. And I think,
yeah.
there was one encounter I had then, it'll never leave me. It was like the water was like glass and the sky was pink. And this juvenile orca was kind of playing target practice with a little orc bird. And the orc was trying to use our boat as like a shield. So we just had this incredible encounter with this orca, like opening its mouth, coming up, grabbing the little orc, pulling it down, never eating it or swallowing it, like just catching it and then letting it go. Then the orca trying to get away, and then the orca coming back to the boat. And I just, when you just think, I can't believe I'm seeing this with my own eyes. Like, it was
Yeah.
just incredible. Norway's one of those places where you never know what you're gonna get that day. Um, so yeah, it's an incredibly special place.
Yeah, like such a unique experience that's on
Yeah.
the orca's terms and that poor orca trying to get away.
So
Scared for its life.
I honestly felt so sorry for the little orc, but it's also just watching the social behaviors of orcas. I was like, oh, okay, you're playing target practice, and just watching, aside from feeling sorry for the little orc, watching the orca learn and play was just like, wow, like how often
Yeah.
do you get to experience something like this?
Yeah, and in the wild on their terms, just incredible. It's so cool. I really love that. And are there any other trips that, or like adventures that you're planning for the future that you're hoping to do together, like in a group?
Oh, I mean, I'm not. I always everything is always based on orcas for me. I definitely will be going back. Yeah, definitely going back to Norway. One thing I am doing actually is a fundraiser for Dolphin Project that will be on Vancouver Island in
Cool.
October.
Very cool.
So yeah, maybe we'll get some transients then. Um, but that will be a group trip for Dolphin Project. So yeah, all the proceeds will go to Dolphin Project, which will be amazing. So that trip is also coming up. Yeah, I will be heading back to Norway January.
Very cool.
And then possibly to Taiji. We'll counteract the
The
fun with that.
counteract
So,
the good and the bad. Yeah.
yeah, but I really, Rick always says this, I really feel like, the conservation aspect is kind of my rent for what I'm able to do and experience with these animals. And I just feel like that's part of my purpose, especially with Taiji. I think this year being there on the ground, and especially with social media, feeling like so many new people saw what was happening that either hadn't watched the Cove or didn't even know the Cove existed. I just feel like that part of advocating is super important, to be like, look at what's happening. Okay, look at how beautiful they are in the wild. Look what we can do. Like, this is how we help. And I just feel like being on the ground and doing that, is, it makes the wild encounters that more special,
Yeah, 100%. And what are some things that people listening, like if they wanted to help, like what are some ways that they can maybe get involved or try to help in any way?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say to everybody is that everybody's voice is needed. I think sometimes people feel fearful if they're not, a scientist, or anyone can help with conservation. I think with Dolphin Project specifically, we do have a Take Action page. So you can go to the Dolphin Project website, go on the Take Action page, and whether that's hosting a fundraiser, whether that's showing the Cove, whether that's, organizing a protest outside a local aquarium, there's so many ways in which you can help. But I think just knowing that using your voice to show up for dolphins, like, everything helps, like we touched on earlier, like, don't buy a ticket. It's the one simplest thing everybody can do. Don't buy a ticket to a dolphin show, and you're already helping.
Yeah. Yeah, and you never know, like, even like my family, we were out to dinner like a couple months ago, and I remember saying like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm never going to SeaWorld again." And they were like, "Why?" And then I kind of like explained why, and like a little bit of like what I've seen on your page and like on other pages, and they're like, "Oh, wow." And I like didn't, like some people just don't even know, it's not in their realm. And like we said about this like fast information happening, like when we can have these kind of like intimate conversations with people, being able to just like educate, like the more you know, the more you can help pass that information along too. And I know that there's also, unfortunately right now going on in the US, a threat to the Endangered Species Act. So I'll put a link in the description. Tamara from Orca Conservancy also put it out there, and that is one of like the biggest things that we could do to help, is obviously advocating and pushing that out there. And they want to take away kind of like the habitat and like the causation of what harms endangered species, which habitat where we live is super important. So imagine how important that is to.
No, it truly is. And,
Yeah.
things like this are super important. Acts like that and the Marine Mammal Protection Act is one of the reasons why dolphins can't be imported from Taiji to the States anymore. So these things are implemented and put into place for a reason. And, getting rid of that, it's very scary. It's a really
Yeah.
scary thought.
So I'll make sure to link that below. I have this coming out next week, so I'll make sure to link that below so people can hopefully take action and be able to help, because the Southern residents need as much help as they can get too. So
They really do. I think it's one of those things of like, you keep the momentum going. And I know that sometimes is really hard, but I do think global pressure works, and keeping it
yeah.
out there, and keep being a voice, and keep their story out there and keep it alive. It's super important. So anyone that has the ability to do that, or a platform to do that, please do it. Please use your voice.
Yeah, and I love what you said. Like, you don't have to be a scientist. Like, you don't have to be it. This is our planet together. Like, we can all do something that makes a little bit of difference. So, you can always make a difference. Like, your voice is important, your uniqueness is important, and
Yeah,
being able to
exactly.
put that out there is vital.
It is, and that vital is definitely the correct word.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. I so enjoyed getting to know you more, and and hearing all about Dolphin Project and, you know, the Southern Residents and your connection with them. So for people listening, how do they get in touch with you?
You can follow me at Alex and Waterlust. And also if you can follow Dolphin Project too, it's Dolphin
Yes.
underscore project on Instagram. I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll link that below, and yeah, and it's also awesome that we connected. So for my brand too, Femme Sauvage, any dolphin design, I'm wearing my one
Yes.
dolphin design here. I have to send that to you too.
Yes.
$5 of that goes towards Dolphin Project and the amazing work that they do as well. So I so appreciate
Thank
you
you. We
coming.
really appreciate that you do that. It means so much to us that you support us in
Yeah,
that
I know
way.
it's not like it's just like my little bit again to try to help in any way I can too. So
No, and I love your stuff. I still wear my orca buff
I
I got
love
from
it.
you.
Yes.
I'm obsessed.
Yes. I'm working on adding the buffs to the shop, but yeah, so thank you so much, Alex, and thank you so much, Wild Ones, for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Revel in the moment like a river flowing to the sea. I feel the energy of life force flowing all through me, and I'll allow it all to dance with my body and play.